Thank you very much. So I like my local supermarket. It has thousands of different products and brands, and even though I've probably never purchased any more than 15 or 20% of them, I like that it has the type of variety that appeals to so many different people at so many different times. However, like most of you, I also like going to the community market. And what's funny about it is, at the community market, they often don't have something I want. Sometimes it's more expensive. Often the trip is more inconvenient. But I like having that other option. I like having something else available to me. In our school district, we have 2 supermarket high schools. And those buildings both offer hundreds of different academic and social and co-curricular options for students. However, in our district, we also have a community market school. And that school is called Linworth, and I'm the principal there, and I want to tell you about it today. So, Linworth has 180 students, grades 9 through 12, and we have all different kinds of skill sets. So we have gifted students, we have students with IEPs and 504s, we have students actively involved in co-curricular activities. People ask me, what kind of kid goes to Linworth? Well, our kids are the same cross-section that you have at the other 2 high schools. I also have a staff of 9 teachers, and we cover the 4 different core areas, as well as PE and health, and I also have a counselor. So, Linworth started in 1973. This program's been around for 43 years now. And I started there in 1988. Yeah. There's a mullet in there. It's brutal. It's very brutal. So I was there in the 80s, and I had students who looked like this. And I was there in the 90s and had students who looked like this. And I was there in the aughts and had students who looked like this. And now I'm still there in the teens, and I have students who look like this. And this. I couldn't decide which one was funnier, so I just put them both on there. I think they're both hilarious. The other thing that's important for me to share with you about my relationship with Linworth is I'm also the father of 3 my 3 children were students and graduated from Linworth. So today's about educational ideas and educational topics, and this is a room full of people who care about those different things. What I'm going to do is talk about a few of those concepts that we care about in education and how we try to practice them in a different way at Linworth. So let me give you an example. Student voice and ownership. We all care about student voice and ownership. We want students to be engaged in the process of education. We want them to feel like they belong, that they have a stake in the game, if you will. And so we try to practice that in a few different ways at Linworth. One of the things that we do is each week we have a town meeting. So for 40 minutes every week, we bring everyone in the community in, every kid, every staff member, and we have proposals and we have discussion topics. And sometimes those are profound. And sometimes those are profoundly boring. That's the way government can be sometimes. But what's important is that every week, every kid and every staff member is in a space where they have a voice, where they can participate in what we're doing at the school. Another thing we do at Linworth, this is the first day of school at Linworth every year. And we start the year with, we know what classes are being taught, we know who will be teaching those classes, but we don't know when they'll be taught, and we don't know who's going to take each of those classes. So we have a day-long process where we have staff members go up on stage and they advertise a class and they answer questions about a particular class. And then we go through a process where we have people, if you're going to take, who's going to take biology? And those people stand up, and then we say, okay, who can take it during this period? Okay, who can take it during this period? Look, it's a brutal process. It's arduous. It's tiring. I'm exhausted at the end of that day. And it'd be so much easier to just shove the data into a computer and have that done in a different way. But what we're trying to accomplish here is create a space where students can see how we build what we build, so they can see the complexities of choice. We want them to be engaged in that process. We want them to own the way the schedule looks. So at the end of the day, we have a schedule board that looks like this, where you have classes that fall into different time slots, and we have rosters. Okay, and like I said, it's a hard process, but it's an important process to this. Before I go off this screen, I just want to point out that small piece of paper off to the right there under alternative timeframes. I'll come back to it later, but I want you to remember that. We know that often our students have an incredible passion and sometimes a deep knowledge of some of the content that we teach. This is a former student of mine who is now a sophomore at MIT, and she loves math. And she felt a sense of frustration that her friends didn't have the same appreciation and love of math that she had. And so she approached one of my math teachers, and they talked about how to build a semester elective called The Joy of Math. And this is her teaching that class. She had students take the class and get to learn why she was so passionate and excited about that. What we try to do is build a place where students can be engaged in and own what we're trying to accomplish there. Another concept we care quite a bit about is responsibility, the growth of self and engaging in and caring about other community members and developing an appreciation for that. High school is a funny place. We're transitioning from middle school where there is one set of expectations and responsibilities, and then going to college where there's a starkly different set of expectations and responsibilities. And so we try to engage students in this process, and we try to talk about that. So here's just a normal, boring picture of some of my students in the hallway, getting some stuff at the locker between classes, no big deal. But as I zoom in on this, what I want you to see is that those lockers don't have locks on them. It's the cultural expectation at Linworth that you don't mess with other people's stuff. As a matter of fact, that you take care of other people's stuff, that you look out for them. And so that sometimes can be a little messy, literally. Like I describe my building as the world's largest teenage bedroom, okay? And so sometimes it looks like this. As a matter of fact, every day by noon, this is what my building looks like. There are backpacks laying around, there are lunch bags, notebooks, computers, smartphones, because they know that in this community they will look out for each other, they will take care of each other, they will not take advantage of each other. This is a funny picture I took a couple weeks ago. I was walking down the hallway, class was in session, so it was quiet, and I noticed that down next to one of the lockers, there was a smartphone that was being charged in an outlet in the hallway. No one's around. And what I know is that kid understood that when he or she came back to get that phone, that it was going to be there and hopefully be charged. That's an expectation. That's taking ownership. That's looking out for community members. That's an ethos that we try to build at Linworth. One of the other really tricky things about high school is what we do with all of the time throughout the day, every day, on the day-to-day basis for kids. So in other words, when kids are in class, that's easy. They're in class. That's where they're supposed to be. But what about when they're not in class? Well, at Linworth, we don't put them necessarily in a designated space. Instead, we call that time where they're not in a specific place, we call that options time. And it is what it sounds like. They have options. So do they have the option to sit around and goof around with their friends? Yes. Do they have the option to play guitar? Yes. Do they have the option to do homework or get help from a teacher or get help from another student? Yes. And I'll tell you that it is often a common part of the experience at Linworth with options time that students fail, that they make mistakes, that they waste their time. But it's part of that process of developing an understanding of responsibility, of what a student needs to do. And so it gives us time to have those conversations with students, to benefit from them not using that time well, and have them grow from it, and have them develop a personal sense of responsibility. Another thing we care very much about at Linworth is experiential education, the idea that we grow and learn through the experiences of life and then reflect upon those things. So we practice this in several different ways at Linworth. One of the things we do is we have this thing called walkabout. Now, the idea of walkabout is that this is, for every one of my seniors, and they go on 2 separate quarter-long internships, for lack of a better term. So the entire 3rd quarter, the entire 4th quarter, all of my seniors are out of the building, and they are in other places learning in other ways. And some of those happen nationally. Some of those happen internationally. Some of those happen locally. As a matter of fact, here's a student who is on walkabout in the Netherlands. Here's a student on walkabout in South Dakota. Here's a student on walkabout in Tibet. Okay, they can be incredible. They can be dynamic. And as a father who's had children who have done a walkabout in Russia, and in Australia, and in Spain, I can tell you that it can be a very exciting and even very scary thing to go through experiential education. But I can also tell you that it's important sometimes for those local walkabouts. Sometimes those are the most valuable experiences, the ones that happen here in town. And very interestingly, I have had several walkabout students who have worked with today's MC. And also very interestingly, I currently have one of my seniors who is on walkabout with the TV station who is recording today's presentation. So, excuse me for a second. Hi, Jamie. Another thing that we do at Linworth for our other grade students, 9th, 10th, and 11th grade students, is we have something that we call interim. And we try to explain to students over in their time at Linworth that not all learning happens inside brick walls. And so we have conversations with them and say, what do you want to learn? What have you always had a passion to find out more about? And so, and this is a week-long process where we shut down classes for a week. And what happens is we have students who say, they talk to the adults at home and they talk to some of the adults at Linworth, and they coordinate a plan for that week. So this is a picture of some students who were taking a class at Linworth called New York Literature, and it was in conjunction with some education students at Columbia University in New York. And they'd been doing some work online, and they'd been having some conversations and sharing some assignments. And when it was time for interim, they wanted to go to New York. So they went to New York for a week, and they had an opportunity to see some of the places they'd been reading about. They had a chance to meet those students from Columbia and have a seminar with them. And so sometimes interim looks like this. Sometimes interim is in town, and it's just, sometimes a kid just wants to take 30 hours and learn about whatever that slimy thing is. I don't even what it is. That's sometimes just what individuals want to find out more about. And so we try to create a space for that to happen. Another thing that we do at Linworth in terms of learning through experience is called the forum. Now, these other things I talked about, the idea is you go out and experience and learn. The forum is a time for us to bring people in to talk to our kids. So what we do is we have a conference style setup where we'll have 20 or so adults come in, and they present to our students in, like I said, a conference format. So there'll be several speakers in each time slot, and the students will read a bio and then decide which one they want to attend each time slot. As a matter of fact, ours is coming up in the next week, and it's really exciting because I'm going to have different individuals coming in from different parts of the community who do different things, have different interests, have different experiences. And thankfully, with technology now, I can have presentations from all around the world. Literally, one of my presentations is going to be of a former foreign exchange student from Germany now, who is now a medical doctor. She's Skyping in next week, and my kids are going to have an opportunity to hear her experiences, hear her failures, ask her questions, and grow from her experience. So, I asked you to remember that little piece of paper off to the side. We have a class, the curriculum essentially is on different components of Yellowstone National Park. The geology of the caldera, the environmental issues there, the effects of climate change, the wildlife, those different kinds of things. But the problem was we couldn't find a time that worked for everyone in the schedule, and so the people teaching the class and the people taking the class came to an agreement that it was going to happen on Monday nights from 7 to 9 p.m. And so every Monday since this past September, these students have been coming in and taking this class and learning about all kinds of different components. And I can tell you very excitedly that at this moment, 8 of those students with 4 adult guides are on a month-long winter hike through Yellowstone National Park. They're there right now. As a matter of fact, just a few nights ago, it was -5 degrees. That's not wind chill, that's real chill, okay? And I am so glad that I'm not one of the people teaching that class. So it's very exciting. It's very exciting. Look, I could talk about Linworth all day. I could tell you all kinds of different things, but that's not the point of what I want to talk about today. What matters is that we're in a district that's made room for both traditional educational models and an alternative educational model, okay? But that's not the norm. We practically demand options and choices in almost every aspect of our lives. This city is a better place because we have multiple grocery shopping options. That's a norm in our life. But in education, that kind of diversity, that kind of choice is not a norm. We have a problem, and we need to bridge that gap. And that's why, as people who care deeply about educational issues, we must be resolved to find ways to support alternative educational models in every school district. Thank you very much.